So today, we're turning this into this. Stay tuned. Hi guys, so for those of you who don't know, my name is Michael and I am the woodworker for MK Designs, and it's a rather cloudy day today, but yeah. I know it's been a while since I put out a video and I do apologize for that. I've been going through some things and I actually lost about 6 months worth of footage, so yeah, I'm hoping to be back into it now and I can get moving forward from here. I've got some really good things coming up, and yeah, so we should be able to move forward from there. But anyway, furniture restoration. As a woodworker, furniture restoration is probably one of the easiest and most popular ways to make money at it. A lot of hobbyists do it, some professional shops do it, and then you've got people in the middle of the road that they do it occasionally, but their main focus is not furniture restoration. I'm more in that category. It's not my main focus, but it is something that I do offer. With that being said, there are some complications that come along with it, but there are also some great benefits that come along with it. One of the complications is it can be time consuming. It can be a lot of work. It can be enjoyable work, but it's still a lot of it. And occasionally I get a piece where I'm looking at it and I'm scratching my head and I'm going, I'm not sure how to do this, and I have to reach out to some people. And the woodworking community has been great. Every time I've reached out, they've given a lot of great ideas and I've been able to figure it out from there. Whether it's doing something exactly as they said or taking what they said and modifying it to work better for me. The benefits to it is it can make you a lot of money very quickly depending on what the piece is. Obviously, smaller pieces are going to cost a little bit less and work may or may not be as abundant. But larger pieces are going to cost more. Obviously, I've done pieces, restoration pieces for like $50. I've done them for $800, and I've done one for $1,500. It was a huge armoire, and it took me about 1.5 years to actually do it right. I had to refabricate some pieces, and yeah, it added up to a lot. The customer was really patient with me. They knew going into it was going to take a while and it was going to be expensive, but it was well worth it in the end. They were extremely happy with it. So with these pieces, they've been really abused. And when I get to the voiceover, when we get into the project, I'll show you on some of the pictures where some of the issues that I knew I was going to run into going into it, and what I come up with to solve those issues. And as we get further along in the video, you'll see that I ran into some issues that I wasn't quite expecting, but I'll show you how I worked around those as well. And yeah, with that being said, let's get to it. So taking a look at the Cedar Chest first, as you can see, this thing has been beaten around. It's been moved quite a few times, and it's got some scratches and dings and stuff like that in it. And this one spot right here, if you can see it, a gallon of bleach actually leaked onto it and drained into it, and it kind of damaged the wood a little bit and ate away a lot of the finish and stuff of that nature. So I've got to get all that cleaned up, and I need to get everything sanded. I am going to have to refabricate the feet on it as well as one of the handles. And as you can see in this photo, it's come apart quite a few times, and they've just, instead of filling the holes in and replacing them in the original spots, they moved it, and it's created a bunch of gouges and stripped holes and things like that. So yeah, that's the biggest issues I have to face on this one, just looking at it. So the first thing I want to do on a piece like this is I want to clean it. And what I found works best is oxalic acid and a good stiff brush. I know you hear the word acid, you think it's harsh and it's strong and it's dangerous, but this is not. It's very simplistic. It's deck cleaner. And I use the Bear deck cleaner from Home Depot, and it works great. And you just spray it on, and then you take your brush and you scrub it around, and then you just wipe it off and let it dry, and then you can move to the next step from there. Now the next step is you need to get off the old finish and try to basically get down to bare wood. You want to get rid of the old finish or any kind of stain that might be on it or anything like that. And there's a few ways you can go about this. This is one way. You can take your random orbit sander with as coarse a grit as you can get. I would recommend 60 if you're going to do this, but there is a downside to doing it this way. One, it takes quite a lot of time to sand it properly and smooth this route, and it clogs up your sanding disc and your sandpaper quite rapidly. And depending on the type of finish that you have, some finishes you can take this to and it's a breeze, it just comes right off. But in this case, it's actually gumming up my sanding disc quite a lot, and I think just sanding the lid here, just a little bit that I've got it sanded, it took me like 20 minutes, and that's just with one grit, and it didn't even get all of it off. So disassembly is actually some of the footage that I lost, but I did have this part here where I was taking off some of the feet and knocking out some of the nails that they had holding the feet on. But this also leads me into the next step, because the next step requires me to actually disassemble it in order to do it properly. And the next step is actually using a stripper to try and strip the finish or stain off. And it gets quite messy. And there are some really harsh ones out there, but there are also some more gentle ones. And even then, it doesn't really get all of it off all the time. Sometimes it does, but not all the time. And I really wish I didn't lose the footage of the table, because the table has a really dark stain on it. And the mess that it created from that was just horrific, just so you get the idea from it. And so, yeah, I took it all apart, and then I put some stripper on it, some safe stripper and non-toxic stuff, and worked it a few times. I think three times is what I wound up doing on it. And I got it down as best I could, and then I sanded from there. And I also lost almost all my footage from sanding, so you don't get to sit and watch me sand for an hour. So, yeah, that's good, right? So one of the issues that I didn't see at first was when I went to take all the hardware off, the back hinges, I'm replacing them with torsion hinges, so I wanted to fill those gaps in anyway. But for the lock, it was actually torn out a couple of times, and there's no way I could have gotten a new lock in there. The lock was busted, and there's just no way it could work. And so I needed to get those filled in so that I could create a new mortise for the new lock. And I went through a few different options. I thought about filling it with wood, some sort of wood, and gluing it in. But I decided to use epoxy instead. So I took some stone coat epoxy and tinted it black and poured it in. And as you can see, my dams didn't do all that good of a job. I had to tape back over it and fill them up a couple of times to get it to where I wanted it to be. So while the epoxy is curing, and now's a good time to start working on the feet that I have to replicate. And so I just cut them down to rough size for the shape that I need, and also work on the handle as well. The back feet are relatively simple. They're basically just a square block with an angle put on two edges, the front and side, or the back and side, I guess it would be. Anyway, there's a couple different ways you can do this. You can definitely take it to your table saw and cut it that way, or on a miter saw. The problem comes in with when you lay down the one angle that you've already got on it, it can kind of throw things off. You wind up having to make a compound cut, and it gets a little complicated. The easiest way I found to do it is just to mark where I want the angles to be and take them to my disc sander and just sand down to that line, and it worked out fabulously. Now, the front feet were a little more difficult because they have that claw kind of shape to them. I had to draw it out and then take it over to the bandsaw and cut it out on there, and then just sand it down to where they were both the same. And as you can see, they came out pretty good. After I did some sanding and some rounding over, they were almost identical. So since I'm not going to be staining the cedar chest, the next step is going to be to start reassembling it after I've sanded it. That was some of the footage that you guys missed. I also lost the footage on cutting the mortise for the lock, so I do apologize for that, but yeah, it's fairly straightforward. I'm going to put the feet back on with screws instead of nails like they were on, like what was holding them on before. I'm going to use some glue as well. And so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drill out my hole for the screws, and then I'm going to put the screws in partially, put my feet where I want them to go, tap them on to mark where I need to drill the pilot holes. Because I'm using cedar, it's a soft wood and very likely to split. I can drill a pilot hole and then drive the screws in and attach the feet on that way. So once I have the feet on the bottom, then I can attach the bottom to the case. Now, I didn't take the case apart because they were some old dovetails. I believe they were machine cut the way they look. But they were starting to crumble a little bit in there, so I just reinforced them with some glue instead of taking them apart and having to try and recut those again. I just reinforced them with some glue and kept them together. So I went to put the bottom on the case, and I used some of the original nails to hold it in place while I drilled pilot holes and countersinks to be able to attach it with cabinet screws. And I just went around like that until I got it attached, and then I flipped it over and started putting the top on. Well, before I started putting the top on, I reattached the trim on the front. You see those dovetails right there. And I just put some glue on the back of the trim and used some brad nails to hold it in place, and then put my parallel clamps on it until the glue set. So as I said earlier, I'm using torsion hinges for the top, and I really like using these for cases like this in chests because a couple of reasons. One, they're easy to install. I mean, they're not difficult at all. And two, you don't have to have that extra hardware to be able to hold the lid open, and so it doesn't clunk you in the head when you're reaching in to pick something up, things like that. And you don't get crushed fingers because it actually controls how fast the lid can be lowered onto the case. So I really like using these, and I like the ones from Rockler, and that's what I'm using here to attach the top with. So now I'm going to start staining the table, and you can see the dark stain. I tried to match as best I could. It's a dark walnut, and you can see how dark it is, and just imagine trying to strip this stuff off and the sludge that comes off of it. It was a major mess. But yeah, I just took my time and brushed the stain on with a foam brush, and then let it set for about 5-10 minutes, and then wiped it off with a clean rag, and it was almost a perfect match. Okay, ignore what I said earlier about having lost the footage of cutting the mortise. I found it. It's the only one I found, but I found it. So what I did was I drew a center line where I needed the lock to go, and then I took the lock itself and drew an outline where I need the mortise to go. And I took a drill bit and drilled the bulk of it out, and then I just used a chisel to finesse it and get it just right to sneak up on the perfect fit. And then once I had the lock in place, I cut out the part for the keyhole, and I was able to attach it from there. And then, of course, I removed all the hardware before I started the finishing part, which should be next. Okay, so for the finish, I use a pre-catalyzed lacquer. And before I spray the lacquer, I'll actually spray a sanding sealer on it, vinyl sanding sealer. And then I'll sand everything with 600 grit, wipe all the dust off, and then spray my lacquer. And on stuff like this, I usually put about 4 coats of lacquer, and then I just reassemble everything, and it's good to go. So there you go. That's what I was able to get done. Like I said in the beginning of the video, it can be a lot of work, but it can be really rewarding as well. And being able to take some pieces like this that have been really abused and gotten damaged, being moved a bunch of times, and people not really paying attention to what they're doing with them, and taking it and turning it almost new again, or making it look like a better piece, and watching the transition from one to the other is sometimes amazing. And with that Cedar Chest, it really was amazing. It's just one of those things where when you first look at it, you're like, what in the world am I gonna do to fix this? And are they gonna be happy with the end result? And then as you move further and further along and you make a little more progress, you start to see it, and it starts to all come together in your head. And when you get finished, you're like, wow, I did that. It's one of those things where you can't believe the skills that you actually have until you put them into practice. Like I said, it's very rewarding. I don't do it as much because there's not as much call for it where I'm at. But people who do, they know that I do it, and they come to me, and yeah, we get it taken care of. So yeah, if you have any questions about furniture restoration, or if you come across an issue where you're not sure how to fix it during doing furniture restoration, feel free to reach out to me. I'm more than happy to help, and I'll give you the best advice that I can. And if I don't know the answer, I do know how to find out. So that's always a plus, right? So I really hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please do me a favor and hit that thumbs up button. And if you haven't done already, hit that subscribe button and click that little bell so you get notified whenever I come out with a new video, which hopefully will be a lot more soon. Fingers crossed. Knock on wood, as they say. So yeah, share it, leave a comment down below. I would love to hear what kind of restorations you like to do and what kind of videos you like to see me do. So yeah, until next time, guys, happy creating.